Imagine booting up your work computer tomorrow morning, and instead of your familiar dashboard, the meticulously arranged widgets, the color-coded pipeline charts, the endless rows of customer data you usually click through.
Right, the stuff we all stare at all day.
Exactly. Imagine instead of all that, there's just nothing. No windows, no buttons, no graphical user interface at all.
Just a blank screen, essentially.
Yeah. The scaffolding of global commerce that you interact with every single day has been completely rewired overnight. And the crazy thing is, it hasn't been rewired to make your life easier.
Not at all.
It's been rewired so that an artificial intelligence agent can just bypass you entirely and take the wheel. Welcome to the deep dive.
A pretty wild concept to wrap your head around, honestly.
It really is. So we are unpacking a genuinely explosive document today. It's this analytical essay reacting to a seismic announcement that Salesforce just made here in 2026.
Yeah, the piece is titled, Salesforce just validated the CRM-Less future and why it's still not enough.
Right. And our mission today is to really figure out what happens to the business world when the UI dies. And, whether slapping a fresh coat of API paint on a 25-year-old database is actually enough to survive the era of the autonomous agent.
Because the premise we are dealing with here, it represents an absolute fundamental severing of how humans have traditionally related to software.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, historically, we measure progress by the visual layer, right?
A cleaner interface, a more intuitive mobile layout, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But the author of our source document, who founded the intelligence platform Support Logic back in 2016, they argue that we are now entering a phase where the interface itself is the obstacle.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's set the specific scene that triggered this manifesto because it's wild. Just recently at TDX, which is Salesforce's massive developer conference in San Francisco.
Massive is an understatement. It's huge.
Right, yeah. So Salesforce, obviously the largest CRM vendor on the planet, they've defined customer relationship management for, the better part of 3 decades?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And at this event, they dropped an absolute bombshell. They announced Headless 360.
Right.
They exposed every single capability within their sprawling platform as an API, a CLI command, so, the command line interface that developers use, and an MCP tool.
And we should probably define MCP immediately for you listening, because it is basically the linchpin of this entire future.
Yeah, definitely. What is MCP?
So it stands for Model Context Protocol. It's essentially an open standard that acts as a secure tether. It allows a massive generalized AI model, like Claude or ChatGPT, to securely reach into your private corporate data and ground its reasoning in your specific reality.
Okay, so by opening all these non-visual pathways, Salesforce's explicit stated goal is to allow AI agents to operate their entire system without ever opening a web browser.
Right, and their own framing was staggering. I mean, they stated clearly that they made a decision over 2 years ago to completely rebuild Salesforce for agents.
Which is wild.
It is. They are basically writing the obituary for the UI-centric CRM era, and they are the very ones who popularized that era to begin with.
Right. So think about a legendary automotive company that spent a century obsessing over the ergonomics of the steering wheel, right? The feedback of the pedals, the clarity of the dashboard.
Like tweaking every little detail for the driver.
Exactly. Then, one morning, they hold a press conference and announce they're stripping the cabin bare. No wheel, no pedals, no glass. From now on, the cars are designed exclusively for robotic drivers. That is the magnitude of Headless 360.
That's a great analogy.
But I have to challenge this premise, right? Because we have spent billions of dollars and decades of research making software more human-friendly, more visual, more intuitive. Is a user interface actually a bottleneck? I mean, why is ripping out the steering wheel suddenly the ultimate strategic high ground?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the author interprets this specific strategic maneuver. They don't just see it as a neat new product feature. They view it as a profound confession.
A confession, how so?
If you read between the lines of the press release, the underlying admission is that the graphical user interface they spent a quarter-century perfecting is no longer the final destination of business value.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The true value lives deep within the engine room. It is the raw data, the underlying business logic, the intricate workflows. When a human have to point and click a mouse to trigger those workflows, you are basically limiting the speed of business to the physical reaction time of a human hand.
Huh. Because we are just so slow compared to the machine.
Exactly. An AI agent doesn't need to see a blue button to know it needs to update a status. It can execute thousands of logical workflows a second if you just let it wire directly into the engine block.
So the screen you and I stare at all day, it was essentially just a clunky translation layer this whole time.
Pretty much.
Like, we couldn't speak in raw database queries, and the machines couldn't intuit our intent, so we compromised on drop-down menus.
Yes, it was a necessary compromise for human limitations.
And now that AI can reason and plan autonomously, forcing it to navigate a human interface would be like, I don't know, forcing a supercomputer to communicate via smoke signals?
Right, it completely cripples the potential of the intelligence.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the core friction point of the manifesto. Because if the UI is dead and the real game is happening below the surface, we have to shine a very harsh light on the foundation itself.
Okay.
What exactly is the AI agent shaking hands with when the human steps away?
Because, yeah, stripping the steering wheel out of a 1999 sedan doesn't miraculously transform it into a hovercraft. You just have a vintage sedan that you literally can't steer.
Exactly.
And the author writes a line that is genuinely brutal in its clarity. They say, you cannot retrofit a 1999 database with a UI into a 2026 signal-driven intelligence layer. You can only dress it up.
And that quote attacks the foundational DNA of traditional platforms. To understand why this is such a critical vulnerability for anyone running a business today, you have to look at the genesis of giants like Service Cloud, Zendesk, ServiceNow, or Freshworks.
Right, the big players.
Yeah. They were all born in the SQL era. Beneath the glossy marketing and the customizable dashboards, they are highly optimized relational databases. They are built around rigid schemas like rows, columns, tables.
It's basically a giant digital filing cabinet.
Exactly. Their entire architecture is dedicated to taking structured data, like a customer's account ID or the date of a contract renewal, and securely locking it into a specific row.
Okay, so if we look at how that plays out in reality, let's say a customer submits a support ticket because their server crashed.
Okay, a classic scenario.
Right. The CRM generates a new row. Ticket ID, 8675, category, outage, status, open. It is incredibly structured.
Highly structured, and making that system headless through new APIs does not alter that rigid DNA. It simply takes the inherent limitations of that 1999 relational architecture and exposes them to an AI over a modern protocol.
So the AI can pull the drawer of the filing cabinet open instantaneously, but it is still just staring at static, structured files.
Exactly. It's just faster access to the same limited data.
But let me push on the logic there, because if I am running a massive enterprise support team, and you tell me my new AI agent now has direct, millisecond API access to every single support ticket my company has ever processed in the last decade.
Right.
That sounds incredibly powerful. I mean, if the AI can read 10 million resolved tickets instantly, shouldn't it be perfectly equipped to solve any customer problem that comes up? Why does the underlying table structure matter if the AI has access to all the answers?
Because the answers a modern AI needs don't live in the structured fields. The manifesto makes a stark distinction here. A headless CRM can flawlessly hand an AI agent the exact resolution steps for a crashed server.
Right. The technical fix.
Yeah. What it cannot hand the agent is 7 years of accumulated frustration signals.
Frustration signals. Okay, explain that.
It cannot pass along the subtle shifts in voice tonality
No.
from an escalation call last Tuesday. It has no mechanism to hand over the complex behavioral pattern, proving that this specific enterprise client always cancels their multi-million-dollar contract exactly 3 weeks after experiencing a second priority one incident in a single quarter.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's visualize that scenario for you listening. Imagine you are managing a vital account. They suffer a massive outage, a P1 ticket.
A nightmare day.
Total nightmare. The system logs it, your engineers fix it, the system marks the row closed. 6 weeks later, another P1 outage.
Ouch.
Right. System logs it, engineers fix it, row marked closed. To the relational database, those are identical successes. 2 transactions completed.
The database performed its function flawlessly. It recorded the state change.
But the human reality surrounding those 2 tickets was drastically different. Like, during that second outage, the client's tone on the emergency bridge call was dead silent, which is, a terrible sign.
Usually the worst sign.
Yeah, and their lead architects started asking pointed questions in a shared Slack channel about contract termination clauses.
And that unstructured intelligence, the silence, the impatience, the subtle shift in sentiment, the historical context that links this behavior to imminent churn, None of that exists in the CRM.
Because it wasn't a drop-down menu option.
Right. The architecture was never designed to capture continuous, emotional, or contextual intelligence.
Yeah.
It was built for forms and drop-down menus.
So making the CRM headless does not magically summon data that was never captured.
No, not at all.
The incredibly sophisticated AI agent reaches its digital hand into the database, pulls out a sterile record that says ticket closed in 45 minutes, and concludes the client is perfectly happy.
While it remains completely oblivious to the fact that the client is currently drafting an angry email to your CEO.
Man, that's a massive blind spot.
It is. You are basically feeding a genius-level reasoning engine, a deeply impoverished data set. The underlying architecture was fundamentally designed for recording transactions, not for powering continuous context-aware artificial intelligence.
And the author identifies this schema mismatch as the root cause of 4 distinct structural sins that a retrofit approach like Headless 360 simply cannot overcome, right?
Yes.
Which brings us to the first of those structural roadblocks, the CRM text, starting with what the text calls the pseudo-data cloud problem.
Right.
So the author notes that almost every major enterprise eventually tries to force their CRM to act as a massive customer data lake.
They all try it eventually.
They try to dump every piece of telemetry, every transcript, every interaction into it, and according to the text, it predictably fails every single time. Why is that?
Well, the mechanics of why it fails are rooted deeply in computer science. Specifically, the physical difference between how a system writes data versus how it reads data. A traditional CRM is optimized for transactional writes. Picture thousands of support agents across different continents, all simultaneously clicking save on various ticket updates at the exact same millisecond.
Right, it's just constant incoming data.
The database must instantly lock those specific rows, process the tiny updates, and unlock them without ever overlapping or corrupting the data. It is a grueling orchestration of microtransactions.
It is built for a relentless barrage of tiny, precise, structured changes.
Exactly. Now introduce an autonomous AI agent into that environment. The agent doesn't want to make a tiny status update. Right. To understand the context of a frustrated customer, the AI wants to execute a massive analytical query.
It's zooming way out.
Right. It asks the system to instantly read, scan, and correlate millions of unstructured voice transcripts, chat logs, and back-end telemetry events spanning 5 years.
So it is trying to find a nuanced pattern in an ocean of messy text.
And when you ask a transactional database to perform a colossal analytical query across unstructured data, the system effectively seizes up. The I/O profile, the way the system handles the input and output of data to the storage disks, it's entirely wrong for the task. The database has to painstakingly scan row after row, locking resources, burning compute power. The author's critique is that removing the UI doesn't alter this physics problem. A headless API just allows the AI agent to hit that performance wall at light speed.
So it just fails faster.
Basically, yes.
And the alternative the author points to is a native purpose-built analytical foundation. They reference their own support logic data cloud, which is built on Snowflake.
Yes, and Snowflake utilizes a completely different architectural paradigm, often column-oriented, designed specifically for tearing through massive, unstructured data sets and executing complex analytical queries without locking up transactional workflows.
Okay, so in that environment, the raw intelligence and the extracted sentiment scores live together at query speed. You literally cannot bend a 1999 transactional tool to do 2026 analytical work simply by hiding the screen.
Exactly. The architecture sets the ceiling on the intelligence. But the CRM tax isn't just about how the database reads and writes. It is also about where the data originates. This is the second limitation, the omnichannel gap.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how you listening navigate a crisis in your own professional life. If a critical piece of software your team relies on goes down, do you patiently log into a vendor's support portal, fill out a highly structured form, submit it, and wait 48 hours for a triage email?
If the business is bleeding money by the minute, absolutely not. Nobody has time for that.
Right. You bypass the portal entirely. You are frantically launching emergency Zoom bridges. You are pinging the vendor's lead engineer in a shared Slack Connect channel, dumping error logs into the chat in real time, working through the debugging process collaboratively.
And the manifesto labels these environments as dark channels.
It is a perfect descriptor. They are dark because to the traditional CRM, they are completely invisible. I mean, the CRM has no architectural visibility into a live Slack huddle or a Zoom screen share.
None. And this is a profound spatial problem. Headless 360 allows an AI agent to perfectly pilot the CRM, but it does absolutely nothing to capture the raw, messy, highly emotional intelligence flowing through those external communication networks.
So if the issue gets resolved after an intense 2-hour collaborative debugging session in Slack, the only artifact that makes it back to the CRM is the engineer manually creating a post-mortem ticket that essentially says, fixed memory leak via Slack collaboration.
Right. The metadata survives, but the actual intelligence is vaporized.
Wow.
The technical nuance, the exact sequence of troubleshooting steps, the subtle shift in the customer's frustration levels, all of it is lost to the dark channels.
So an AI agent operating strictly within the confines of a headless CRM is functionally blind to how the actual work of the business is being conducted.
Completely blind. The author's solution, naturally, involves native integration directly into those dark channels. Platforms like Support Logic deploy listeners directly into Slack, Zoom, and voice streams to capture the raw, unstructured interactions exactly where they occur.
Instead of waiting for a human to summarize them into a CRM field later.
Right. You have to move the intelligence gathering to the edge rather than relying on the center.
Okay, so the spatial disconnect of missing Slack data is massive. But the text pivots to an even more insidious problem, a temporal problem involving how the AI itself perceives time and memory.
This brings us to the third structural limitation, the session-based AI trap.
Okay, explain this one.
We are moving from the flaws of the database to the flaws of the reasoning engines themselves. Think about the flagship AI products from the major vendors right now. Salesforce has Einstein and the new Agentforce models. Microsoft has Copilot.
Sure, we use those all the time.
And the fundamental interaction paradigm for almost all these tools is the session. You provide a prompt, the AI provides a response.
It is inherently reactive. But let me push back on why the author views this as a trap. Because from a user perspective, prompt and response is exactly what makes AI so magical.
Sure.
Like, I have a highly specific coding error. I paste the error log into the prompt. The AI analyzes it and spits out the exact Python fix. My problem is solved instantly. Why is that reactive model a liability for an enterprise?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that reactive session is brilliant for discrete atomic tasks. Writing a single email, debugging one block of code, sure. But the author draws a hard line here. Enterprise relationships are not discrete sessions.
Right.
They are not one-off transactions. A major B2B contract is a multi-year, highly nuanced marriage involving dozens of stakeholders across both organizations, thousands of micro-interactions, and constantly shifting sentiment.
And the document uses a very specific predictive scenario here. Imagine trying to predict which of your top 50 strategic accounts is going to spontaneously escalate an issue to your CEO next quarter.
You absolutely cannot predict that kind of complex behavioral event with a prompt and response session. You can't just boot up an AI agent on a Friday afternoon, type, "Who is going to be angry next month?" and expect an accurate answer based on structured database fields.
Right, because predicting an escalation requires an intelligence that has been persistently, quietly watching.
Yes.
It needs to have noticed that 3 different mid-level managers at the client company have subtly changed their language over the past 6 weeks, using slightly more aggressive adjectives in their emails.
Exactly. It needs to correlate that subtle linguistic shift with a recent 10% drop in their overall usage of your platform.
And the author introduces a vital concept here, referencing Harrison Chase, the creator of the LangChain framework. The concept is ambient AI.
Right, ambient. Ambient implies an intelligence that is continuous. It runs perpetually in the background like the temperature of a room. It establishes baselines, monitors for deviations, and surfaces critical insights before a human ever realizes there is a question to be asked.
That's a huge distinction. An AI restricted to a session is like an incredibly powerful encyclopedia sitting on a desk. It knows everything, but it is utterly useless until you physically open it and ask it a question.
Right. You have to initiate it.
But ambient AI is like having a veteran, deeply observant account manager standing in the corner of the room listening to every conversation, who suddenly taps you on the shoulder and whispers, "Hey, based on how they just phrased that request, they are looking at a competitor. Intervene right now."
That is the perfect way to look at it. Yeah. Exposing a reactive session-based intelligence engine via a headless API does not magically grant it ambient awareness or persistent memory across time.
It simply allows an automated script to prompt the encyclopedia faster.
Exactly. It is still a fundamentally reactive posture in a business environment that desperately demands proactive intelligence.
And this reactive posture leads directly into the business reality of limitation number 4. the governance and lock-in question. We have to look at the immense gravitational pull of enterprise ecosystems.
Oh, vendor lock-in is the reality. Every chief information officer battles daily. It's a nightmare.
And the dynamic with Headless 360 is insidious by design, right? The author points out that every time your team builds a new MCP tool to connect to it, every time you author a custom agent script, every time you configure a deployment pipeline in DevOps Center,
You are basically weaving your company's operational DNA deeper and deeper into the proprietary fabric of the Salesforce stack.
Now, if you are a company that has managed to miraculously standardize every single process globally on one vendor, perhaps you accept that deep lock-in as the cost of doing business.
Sure, maybe. But the author rightfully points out that the real enterprise landscape is incredibly fragmented.
It's messy.
Very messy. Picture the IT architecture of a massive multinational.
Yeah.
They might be legally required to run Zendesk in Germany for strict data residency compliance. Their massive North American sales apparatus is deeply entrenched in Salesforce. Their internal employee help desk runs entirely on ServiceNow. And lurking in the basement is a terrifying homegrown system from 2008 that manages legacy hardware replacements that no one knows how to update.
I think every IT person listening just shuddered. But that is a highly typical, messy reality.
It is. And if you commit to building your agentic future entirely around Headless 360, you are implicitly committing to a massive multi-year, multi-million-dollar migration initiative.
Just to forcefully unify all of those disparate global systems under one vendor's umbrella, so your AI agents can have a consolidated view of the data.
Which is a colossal undertaking. The author proposes a radically different architectural philosophy, the overlay model.
Okay, the overlay model. Walk us through that.
Rather than engaging in a brutal multi-quarter war to migrate legacy databases, you leave the fragmented systems exactly where they are.
You just don't touch them.
Right. You treat the messy reality as a structural feature. You build or deploy a dedicated intelligence layer, an ambient AI cloud that hovers above the fray.
Okay, so it sits on top of Salesforce in North America, Zendesk in Europe, and the dark channels of Slack and Zoom.
Exactly. It reaches down like a series of tentacles, extracting the raw signals from all those disparate silos, and builds its own unified, persistent memory, completely independent of any single vendor's database constraints.
So it democratizes the intelligence, ensuring the enterprise is never held hostage by the vendor supplying the foundational plumbing.
Right. Now, up to this point, analyzing all these database failures and lock-in traps, one might assume this manifesto is simply a hit piece aimed at taking down a legacy giant.
Yeah, it sounds pretty aggressive so far.
But the pivot the author makes next is vital. They actually agree with Salesforce on several massive tectonic shifts occurring in the industry right now.
Oh, really? Let's examine this common ground, because these shared convictions are essentially a roadmap for the next decade of software. So the author offers profound praise for Salesforce correctly reading the macro-level tea leaves.
Yes.
They explicitly validate the thesis that human operators will no longer be the primary users of business software. Autonomous agents capable of complex reasoning, planning, and multi-step execution will handle the vast majority of operational workflows within an astonishingly short time frame.
The author actually states, agent-first workflows are the correct framing. Salesforce recognized the wind-changing direction and aggressively pivoted a massive ship to catch it.
And the strategy of exposing their entire platform simultaneously through standard APIs, CLI commands, and MCP tools is highlighted by the author as a deeply pragmatic move. They call it a smart hedge against protocol churn.
Which makes sense. Think about the sheer velocity of AI development right now.
It's insane.
Nobody on Earth knows with absolute certainty what specific communication protocols the dominant AI agents of 2029 will prefer to use.
We don't even know what they'll use in 6 months.
Exactly. By blasting open every possible digital doorway into their system, Salesforce ensures that no matter what language the future speaks, it'll be able to interface with their database.
It is defensive architecture at its finest. And their embrace of MCP, the Model Context Protocol we defined earlier, is a massive industry signal.
It really is.
The text elevates MCP to the status of the connective tissue of the agentic enterprise. And the author points out that their own company, Support Logic, shipped a custom MCP server.
Right, but they didn't build it to lock data in. They built it so that if a client wants to use OpenAI's latest reasoning model, or Anthropic's Claude, or Google's Gemini, those massive cognitive engines can plug directly into the Support Logic environment.
So the massive AI models provide the reasoning horsepower, And the MCP tether grounds that horsepower in the highly specific, nuanced reality of your enterprise data.
Precisely. Both the author and Salesforce agree that this decoupled approach, separating the reasoning engine from the data storage, is the definitive architecture of the future.
They agree on the plumbing.
Yeah.
But there is a granular detail buried in this section of the text that reveals a terrifying shift in the balance of power. We have to look closely at the new developer reality.
Oh, yeah. This raises an important question, because during their massive developer conference, Salesforce actively encouraged their ecosystem to use external third-party AI tools to build applications on their platform.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they explicitly highlighted tools like Claude Code, Cursor, and Codex.
Think about the implications of that. You have a platform that has spent 2 decades building highly proprietary, walled garden development tools, suddenly telling its core audience to go use an external competitor's AI to write the code. Why surrender that ground?
It is an existential concession. When a platform tells developers to utilize outside AI environments to author code, they're publicly admitting that the high-level cognitive work, the actual interest in creation and authoring, is no longer happening inside their ecosystem.
The gravity has totally shifted.
Completely. The developer's primary relationship is now with the external AI coding assistant like Cursor, not with the underlying platform.
And the author distills this shift into a chilling realization for legacy vendors. They say integration is the product now. The value proposition is no longer about providing the best environment to do the work.
No, the value is simply being an easy-to-access storage locker for the superintelligent agents doing the work elsewhere.
Wow. So if the UI has been stripped away and the complex authoring and reasoning are happening outside your walls in external AI tools, and the ambient intelligence is living in an overlay layer, what actual value remains within the CRM itself?
That is the million-dollar question.
Which brings us to the climax of this deep dive and the ultimate strategic decision facing anyone leading a business today. We can frame this as the 2026 question.
Right. Because back in 2015, the career-defining question for a technology leader was purely infrastructural. It was, which CRM should we standardize our entire company on?
So, what does this all mean? It means that in 2026, asking which CRM to buy is entirely the wrong framework. The only question with strategic weight is, where does the intelligence about my customers actually live?
And the manifesto crystallizes this into a choice between 2 very divergent philosophies. Choice A is the path of the headless legacy system. You decide that the intelligence will live inside the CRM.
And the result of that choice is that you have deliberately accepted a low ceiling on your capabilities, right?
Yes. Your incredibly sophisticated AI agents will remain forever bottlenecked by the 1999 relational database architecture.
Because if a nuance wasn't typed into a structured field, the AI is just blind to it.
Exactly. And to even achieve that baseline functionality, you have to subject your organization to a grueling multi-quarter migration project to consolidate your data, locking your future into a single vendor's roadmap.
You are betting the future of your company on the hope that a transactional filing cabinet can be stretched and contorted to behave like an ambient intelligence engine.
Right. And choice B is the alternative paradigm, a CRM-less architecture.
Now, the term CRM-less is highly provocative. It sounds like a mandate to delete your entire database and run a Fortune 500 company on intuition and vibes.
Which would be a disaster.
Right. That is absolutely not the case. We need to clearly redefine what CRM-less actually means in this context.
CRM-less means post-CRM as center. It's a profound shift in gravitational pull.
Yeah, because for 20 years, the CRM has been the sun of the enterprise solar system. Every single application, every workflow, every piece of customer data was forced to orbit around it. If data didn't make it into the CRM, it didn't exist to the business.
The CRM-less philosophy demotes the legacy system. It takes the CRM from being the sun to simply being one of many planets.
Okay, so if the CRM is demoted, what ignites as the new sun?
The dedicated ambient, signal-rich intelligence layer. A true cognitive AI cloud. This layer sits in the center, hovering above the legacy infrastructure. It acts as a massive ingestion engine, pulling structured data from the demoted CRM, pulling ticketing data from Zendesk. But vitally, it also pulls the raw, unstructured emotion from the dark channels of Slack, Zoom, and voice calls.
And the source document notes this specific architecture is capable of tracking over 40 nuanced, unstructured signals simultaneously.
Right. It maintains persistent ambient memory across every channel, completely independent of the underlying storage pipes. The CRM simply becomes a dumb pipe feeding structured facts up into the truly smart intelligence layer.
And because it operates as an overlay, the author emphasizes a staggering difference in time to value, don't they?
Massive difference.
Like instead of a multi-year rip-and-replace migration, an overlay intelligence layer can be deployed, integrated, and actively predicting customer churn in 45 days.
45 days. It's almost unheard of in enterprise IT. You leave the messy, fragmented legacy systems exactly as they are, and you build the cognitive brain right on top of them.
And the author concludes with a reflection on how rapidly the paradigm has shifted. I mean, in 2016, suggesting that the CRM should not be the center of the enterprise universe was treated as sheer heresy.
People thought they were crazy.
Right. But in 2026, when the company that invented the modern CRM is physically ripping the user interface off its flagship product just to keep pace with AI agents, that heresy has become the undeniable consensus.
The era of the agent isn't approaching anymore. It has fully arrived. The only decision left is choosing the architectural foundation you will build upon to survive it.
So we have journeyed from the metaphor of the vanished steering wheel to the deep architectural schisms beneath the surface.
We've examined the severe limitations of forcing analytical AI queries through transactional database bottlenecks.
And the critical blindness to unstructured dark channels like Slack and Zoom. We contrasted the reactive, prompt-based AI sessions of legacy vendors with the proactive, persistent awareness of ambient AI frameworks.
And we arrived at the monumental pivot point of 2026. The choice between trapping your company's intelligence inside a siloed headless database or liberating it within a persistent CRM-less overlay.
The author of our document bet heavily on the overlay model years ago, and Salesforce's radical pivot really seems to validate that the fundamental rules of the game have changed forever.
They absolutely have. And before we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you listening with a final thought that takes these massive enterprise concepts and applies them directly to your reality.
Oh, this is good.
Because we have spent this entire time dissecting Fortune 500 infrastructure. But look closely at your own personal digital life.
That is a fascinating shift in perspective.
Yeah, look at the smartphone sitting next to you right now. Think about your email application, your massive photo library, your banking app, your digital calendar.
Okay.
In their current state, every single one of those personal tools is functionally identical to the 1999 enterprise databases we just spent an hour critiquing.
Wow, you're right. They are deeply siloed data structures with a graphical user interface layered on top.
Exactly. You have to physically open a specific silo, navigate its unique visual layout, and manually prompt it to perform a task.
My calendar has absolutely no ambient awareness of the context hidden inside my emails, and my banking app has no idea what is happening in my calendar. They are totally blind to each other.
If the multi-trillion-dollar corporate sector is collectively realizing that maintaining siloed, session-based applications is vastly inferior to establishing a centralized ambient intelligence layer.
Right.
The inevitable question is, when does that realization reshape consumer technology?
Like, how long until the very concept of going to an app store, downloading a specific visually constrained app, and tapping a screen feels as archaic and hilariously outdated as a human operator manually typing a status update into a CRM?
Exactly. When does your personal smartphone operating system shed its user interface entirely? Imagine an ambient, continuous intelligence that quietly observes all your data streams, your financial, social, logistical data, correlates the signals in the background, and simply manages your digital existence without ever requiring you to point, click, or tap a piece of glass.
That is a staggering implication, because if the steering wheel has already been violently removed from the enterprise machine, the steering wheel on your personal devices is almost certainly the next to go.
It's coming. The invisible earthquake isn't contained to the massive server farms. The aftershocks are heading straight for the palm of your hand.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope this exploration gave you a powerful mechanism-level understanding of the invisible forces currently rewiring the software landscape. Keep questioning the systems you use every day, keep looking past the visual layer, and we will see you next time as we continue to explore the intelligence beneath the interface.